preventing the movement of aquatic invasive species. Go get them, Ron.
Thanks, Forrest. Yeah, I work for Sea Grant. I'm above the bridge here. I'm in the Upper Peninsula, so I'm up on Lake Superior and Marquette, and our program runs through both University of Michigan. Our director's here, Jim Diana, and also we work through Michigan State University. So we're a joint program in Michigan, and I'm 400 miles from our campuses, so maybe that's a plus. Anyway, I'm going to start out. I'm going to cover two aspects of HACCP. I'm going to start with the seafood HACCP, how I've been involved with that, with the food safety end, and then at the end of the second half of the talk, we'll get into AIS HACCP, how we actually used seafood HACCP. A colleague of mine, he's retired now, Jeff Gunderson, I actually developed the AIS HACCP program, taking the HACCP principles and incorporating them into aquaculture and the bait fish industry to use to prevent the movement of aquatic invasive species. So, because Jeff and I were both trained early in HACCP when the seafood HACCP thing was implemented. I got trained by both the National Marine Fisheries Service and also the Food and Drug Administration to implement the program. So Jeff and I took it to a different level, and I'll cover that in the second half of the program. But first of all, I'm going to talk about the seafood HACCP, and it's a system for food safety control, and it stands for hazard analysis and critical control points. It's preventative, it's not reactive. We used to have a food inspection system, USDA, a lot of food inspections, but we used to hear years ago about a lot of the problems got out of the barn. People got sick, E. coli poisoning, hamburger, stuff like that. And basically it's a management tool to protect the food supply against biological, chemical, and physical hazards. Basically, it complements the traditional methods, and it emphasizes process control. It also concentrates on the points in the process that are critical to the safety of the product. When people first get involved with seafood HACCP, they almost want to list everything as a critical control point. That gets a little bit laborious because you start have to keeping records at all those points. So you really want to concentrate on those key points. Maybe at some point can even take care of two of your hazards, knock off a couple at one places. And everybody's trained the same way. It stresses communication between the regulator, the industry. I've been teaching seafood HACCP since it's first started, and even the regulators come through my courses, both with the Food and Drug Administration and our state of Michigan food inspectors. So everybody's trained the same way. And basically, if you look at the regulation, every processor shall have and implement a written HACCP plan whenever you identify a hazard related to some food safety issue. And it should be specific again for each processing location and each species of fish type and product. So, and again, even the processing location is important because you heard Jimmy talk about this earlier, and we deal with it with our seafood HACCP classes. We have the Bioterrorism Act. All our processing facilities, and I work on both sides of it, both our Great Lakes commercial fishing industry, which is a relatively large industry, and they have a lot of processing plants in Michigan, and also our aquaculture folks. They have to register those facilities if they're processing fish. The regulation does not apply to the harvest or transport of fish or fishery products. Practices such as heading, eviscerating, freezing, intended for the sole purpose of holding fish on a harvest vessel or the operation of a retail establishment. So those are exempt. I'm not going to go into the details, but there's actually 7 principles of HACCP. And basically you conduct a hazard analysis. What you do is develop a flow diagram for your operation. Everybody knows their own processing operation. Some people may have unique things they do. They got to go through all these steps. They can identify the control points, critical limits, monitoring, corrective actions they'll take, record keeping systems, which are important because the regulators are going to visit you. And just before I came here, I had a commercial fisherman call me from his boat way out on Lake Huron saying, hey, they came in and he was defunct for a while, not keeping proper records, and he was in trouble. So he sent me his things on the way here. I was trying to work through some of the questions the regulators were asking with him. So record keeping is very important. And also establish verification procedures. Again, this is a very simple flow diagram here. Incoming materials, what are you going to do? Processing, packaging, storage, distribution. Most of our plants have a lot more great detail than this. There's a lot of different things they do, especially when they get into ready-to-eat products like smoked fish products. Some of the aquaculture practices that are exempt, basically harvesting and boxing unprocessed fish on ice for immediate transportation, live fish hauling, custom processing of fish directly for the consumer who doesn't resell it, and fee fishing operations. So these are actually exempt from the seafood HACCP. There may be local health department issues with some of this, and you got to work with your local county health departments. There's a lot of misnomers too. I get aquaculture folks attending my seafood HACCP courses, and they think, well, I don't use aquaculture drugs. I don't have anything to do with it. Why am I here? They tell me I have to be here. Well, even if they don't use aquaculture drugs, they're going to be paid a visit by the regulators. You actually have to prove that you're not using or don't have any residues in your products, and you have to work that out with the people you're going to be selling your fish to, the processor. You got to make certain agreements. Who's going to do the testing? Maybe both of you are going to be involved with shared testing, you know, and there's verification programs. Even your buyer may have to just do things later where he has to just to make sure that you're telling the truth too, that you're not using aquaculture drugs. But these are just a list of several ones that we use in seafood HACCP. There's different examples for each of these different procedures. You can choose which ones you want to use. Maybe you want to use a combination of these, but you really should be working with, if you're a producer, work with your processor, work those out, because the regulators are going to visit this issue. Even if you're not using them, never used them, you still got to deal with this issue if you're an aquaculture producer. Some of our efforts since I started working with seafood HACCP, again, I became certified both through the National Marine Fisheries and FDA programs. I went through the early training with them. So far I've conducted 23 three-day seafood HACCP courses in the Great Lakes region. When I first started teaching HACCP, they had all these examples. ABC Shrimp Company from the Gulf of Mexico. Our people in the Great Lakes were just shaking their heads. So I actually redid the whole program. I created models for our folks up in our region. I did a lot of stuff. We have a lot of smoked fish up in that region. It's a very popular product. Even since I started teaching that, since I've even developed smoked fish stuff, I've had other people from other countries come over to attend it, because they do that. Like I've had the FDA folks from Nigeria show up a couple years ago. Last year they tried to get 11 more people trained from their country, but their visas weren't accepted, so they were going to come to the Upper Peninsula for training. I had Starkist Tuna send people from all the way from Senegal to come up there, and I said, you just come here for this? Yeah, just for this course, you know. So you get a lot of different people showing up for these courses. The training, we train 653 commercial fishers, processors, aquaculturists, and I do a lot of follow-up. I just don't do teaching. I get into these processing facilities. I do a lot of follow-up, so over 400 follow-up visits to processing facilities, a lot of consultation with the people, because the regulators do visit them and a lot of issues do get developed. Part of this, the benefits of seafood HACCP, we actually carry it a little bit farther. We try to encourage our people, and I've been involved with a lot of marketing products, is value-added products. Just don't try to sell your fish out the door. Try to do something that can even increase the value. And again, we do a lot of fish smoking in the Great Lakes, different products. There's regular smoked fish pâtés, there's smoked fish sausages. We even developed caviar. We have lake whitefish in the Great Lakes. I think it's number 5 in world markets for caviar. It's sold especially in Scandinavian countries. And Jim Diana, our director, in the last few years, also been doing a seafood summit coordinating that. Chris Weeks and I have been on the planning committee. It's been very successful, just promoting our products, and we have both aquaculture and our commercial industries working together on this. We promote products, and the last one we just had a few weeks ago down in Detroit, so that was a great summit. Now, what I said earlier, Jeff Gunderson and I developed that using the seafood HACCP into HACCP for the prevent the movement of aquatic invasive species in aquaculture and bait fish operations. And again, they can invade and disrupt bait fish and aquaculture operations. Again, they've been identified as pathways. You know, these industries didn't bring them here, but everybody's pointing the finger at them. And it can result in closed areas to harvest, impose regulations that may be disruptive to the industry. Some states and provinces have banned importation. Harvest from areas require exotic free certification. You get unnecessary, poorly designed regulations. And it's extremely diverse if you look at these industries. You know, production, product types, water, species. And you look at the product types, you know, some are low risk like food. You get the high risk areas like bait fish. Not Arkansas, that's probably low risk, but the industries I work with on the Great Lakes where they wild capture, where we have these invasive species, this is an issue. And I work with those industries, and we've had a lot of problems when certain invasive species in the Great Lakes, the regulators want to shut down this multi-million-dollar industry, and a lot of them don't even think, you know, the bait supply actually drives our recreational fishery in the Great Lakes. You got to be very careful. It's got to be balanced. Water sources, again, low risk, you know, especially if you got springs, well water, surface water, a little bit higher risk. If we look at these risks, again, food fish market, you know, very low risk, spring water, low risk. If you don't harvest from infested waters, low risk, closed systems. Again, I work with a lot of these industries in the Great Lakes, higher risk, bait fish harvested from infested waters. Working with those industries, we develop a lot of education, working with the life cycles of these invasive species, maybe where they can harvest in those areas where certain times of the year they're not prevalent into those areas, they can avoid those areas. And we developed a lot of model approaches with them, developing HACCP programs, working with that industry. And these industries the bait industry had to become involved with it because they were going to be put out of business. And that's where Jeff Gunderson and I put the program together, and the bait industry was begging for us to work with them to save their industry, because we're going to lose that industry if we didn't put something in place, and that's where we put this AIS HACCP program. What do we want with this? We want to prevent AIS from establishing reproducing populations, balance resource protection with potential negative economic impacts. So how do we allay the concerns? Again, have policy and procedure in place to deal with concerns, robust enough to work for a wide variety of aquaculture and bait fish operations, and again, records that show that the policies and procedures are followed and working. But you know, are these going to be very obtrusive? And Jeff and I had this cartoon, you know, we're going to come in here and basically mess up your operations, you know. But again, we work closely with our industries. We did a lot of beta testing. We developed the program. They worked with us when we were developing it. So it's been very positive. And again, the HACCP approach, preventative, not reactive, concentrates on the main points, especially with the folks I work with wild harvest, bait fish off the Great Lakes. And we need a lot of bait fish in the Great Lakes to supply our recreational fisheries. And our wild capture is mostly emerald shiners and spot-tail shriners, and we do import from Arkansas. And we do the golden shiners and fathead. They all come in from Arkansas. We got trucks coming into Michigan every week with those bait fish. So, and our regulators realize that. You know, we have to supplement that with other baits. So, and again, it stresses communication between the regulators and the industry. Again, the 7 principles, you already seen that. And some of the potential hazard when you develop it. In seafood HACCP, we had biological, chemical, and physical. And when Jeff and I developed the program, we had a lot of debate. What are going to be these hazards? And again, we broke them down into fish and other vertebrates, invertebrates, plants, and diseases. We developed training materials. We've got training manuals. That's the 2nd edition there. We have a CD with all the resources. We have a lot of fact sheets on there, all the training curriculums on there, so everything's there. We have the videos. And since our work with the AIS HACCP, again, worked with the Minnesota Sea Grant program to develop AIS HACCP program. We worked with the bait fish and aquaculture industries in training programs and implementing the plans that are specific, again, to their operations. And since I've been involved with it, conducted over 40 AIS HACCP one-day training programs in the North Central region. And the funding came from this, first from the National Sea Grant Program, and then from the Great Lakes Protection Fund, and then from the North Central Regional Aquaculture Center. Especially when the VHS virus got into the Great Lakes, they supplied a lot of funds when we got into this training. And I was actually traveling all over from the Dakotas into Missouri to Ohio, all over to do this training. And we also tied in aquaculture biosecurity with this AIS training program to AIS HACCP. So the conclusions are the HACCP approach can work as long as there are communications from personnel in the field as well as management. We think that this approach can replace more intrusive impacts that may result from unnecessary, ineffective, unenforceable regulations. Control measures and corrective actions must be developed, and they must be AIS specific. And again, it's in the best interest of public hatchery managers. They've been involved with a lot of our training, both federal, state hatcheries, tribal hatcheries, fish farmers, bait harvesters, resource managers, researchers, and enforcement officers to prevent the spread of AIS. So with that, I don't know, do we have time for a question, or? That's fine. Okay, thanks.